The HUD might be the most helpful thing in modern games, and also the thing that kinda ruins the experience. Take my playthrough of The Witcher 3. On paper, the HUD was doing everything right. Tell me where to go, when to heal, and what to focus on next. And for the longest time, I thought this was a good thing. But during a recent playthrough, I started to notice something weird. I wasn't really playing anymore. I'd become so focused on the icons that I was basically on autopilot, just following instructions and having my hand held the entire time. I kept bouncing between the HUD and the world, and the more I noticed it, the more it bothered me. So I turned it off, and suddenly everything changed. And the first thing that changed was that I got lost. I turned off the HUD, took a few steps, and my first thought was, where the fuck do I go? But here's the weird part, that actually made the game better, because the moment I had to figure things out for myself, I actually started to feel more like Geralt. Instead of mindlessly following a GPS in the corner of the screen, I had to pay attention to the world again. If I saw a landmark like the Hangman's Tree or spotted Novigrad on the horizon, I could roughly piece together where I was and where I needed to go, just like how I imagined Geralt actually would. And once I started navigating like that, over time something weird happened. I started to get really familiar with the world. The roads, the landmarks, the way everything connected, it all slowly became second nature, kind of like how you might learn the streets around your own city or neighborhood. Eventually, I even got to a point where I could navigate Novigrad, the biggest city in the game, purely from memory, and honestly, that felt incredible. That's when the world stopped feeling like a game and started feeling like a place I was actually a part of, almost like I was Geralt. And that same feeling carried over into everything else I did too, especially quests. Because if I wanted to find quests, I actually had to pay attention. I had to keep an eye out for notice boards or listen for NPCs calling out to me, which felt really natural. And then once I actually started a quest, things changed even more. I no longer had a giant yellow circle telling me exactly where to search, so I now had to rely on Geralt's Witcher senses. I followed footprints, examined clues, and used context to figure out what to do next, and that was fucking awesome because it made me feel like I was actually investigating something and not just completing another objective. And that sense of immersion even carried over into combat, because without any HUD, the fights felt way more cinematic. With nothing on the screen, I could focus purely on the movement, the dodges, the spins, the animations, all the stuff that makes The Witcher 3's bare-ass combat look so damn good when you're not darting your eyes towards UI elements. I no longer had any idea how powerful the enemies were, so I had to feel how many hits I could take instead of monitoring a big red bar. Which honestly made the fights way more immersive because that's exactly how I imagine Geralt experiences combat. He's not checking a UI, he's relying on instinct. So yeah, as you can probably tell, I really like being Geralt. But here's the thing, as much as I've been preaching my ass off about how awesome this was, The Witcher 3 clearly isn't designed to be played without the HUD, and that came with some problems. For one, certain quests became awkward. If the next objective was really far out of sight, I couldn't rely on Geralt's Witcher senses, so I'd have to keep opening the map, which I hated because it completely killed the immersion. And because I couldn't see optional objectives anymore, I ended up missing a few unless I kept checking the quest log, which, just like opening the map, completely broke the flow, and that was annoying. On top of that, combat had its issues too, because while it was cool not knowing how strong an enemy was, sometimes I'd run into an enemy that was way above my level and not realize it until I got one shot which would send me back to my last save point. The only proper solution is to muck around with HUD settings, which in itself is boring as fuck. So yeah, even though The Witcher isn't designed to be played without the HUD, I genuinely think the good still far outweighs the bad, especially when it makes you feel more like the character the whole game is based around. But that's just one game, because when I tried the same thing in Dying Light the Beast, I had a completely different experience. To quickly explain, Dying Light is a first-person survival horror game set in a post-apocalyptic world. A post-apocalyptic world where I'm supposed to be seeing through someone's eyes, yet somehow I'm wearing futuristic AR goggles, the HUD, which when you think about it is kinda weird. But the real issue isn't that it looks weird, it's that the HUD takes away the tension the game is actually trying to deliver. It's supposed to feel scary, unpredictable, intense, but I found the HUD to be so overpowered that at times it felt like it was playing the game for me. And what I'm talking about specifically is with the volatiles, the scariest thing in the entire game. At least they're supposed to be. But I found that with the HUD on, they're honestly not that scary, and it's really just because it gives way too much information. For example, every time I'd ping my survivor sense, it would instantly put a marker over the volatile's head. At certain distances, I could see their vision cones filling up, and whenever they got suspicious, a question mark would pop up on my screen, even if I wasn't looking at them. It completely removed any uncertainty because it was just way too easy to avoid them. Like, if I wanted to get into a chase, one of the coolest things in the entire game, I had to pretty much get seen on purpose to experience it. It felt like I was missing the entire point of Dying Light, which was annoying, so I decided to turn all that stuff off. Well, technically my brother told me to, so shout out to him, but honestly, I didn't think it would make that much of a difference. However, it completely changed the game for me because I had no idea where anything was, and for the first time, the world actually felt dangerous. I became so hesitant to move because I genuinely couldn't tell if a volatile could see me or not. Without the HUD, the only thing I could rely on was the survivor sense, which still pinged their position but didn't tell me if they could see me or if they were investigating. And with no question marks anymore, I had to be way more aware of my surroundings and the noise I can make because a volatile could come from behind at any moment. And if I did get caught, oh man, it was intense. Like, sometimes it would happen out of nowhere and I'd just get slammed with this insane rush of adrenaline, and honestly, that was fucking cool. This is what Dying Light is supposed to feel like. However, again, this did come with some issues. Similar to what happened with The Witcher, when I turned the HUD off, I wasn't just removing distractions, I was removing pretty much all the information the game gave me. So suddenly, things like managing my health, my stamina, even which item I had equipped, all of that became something I had to relearn, which meant I had two choices. Either accept I was going to die more, or start digging through a massive list of settings to make things less painful, which in itself is also painful. So even though turning the HUD off isn't perfect, it does completely change how the game feels, especially when it starts to feel closer to how it was meant to be played. But I have to admit, after going through both Dying Light and The Witcher without the HUD, it made me realize something. Turning off the HUD can be pretty daunting. Not because it's difficult mechanically, but because you know there's going to be this awkward, boring 15 minutes of digging through settings, followed by at least an hour of relearning how to play the game, which not everyone is prepared to give up time for. On top of that, because you know most games aren't designed for it, there's this fear you might ruin the experience and you can't get that time back. And honestly, that's enough to put most people off before they even give it a chance. But here's the cool part, some games already understand all of this. Like, take Ghost of Yōtei for example, one of the few games that genuinely feels like it was meant to be played without a HUD, and that's because everything in the world guides you naturally. The guiding wind, the foxes, the birds, they're all quietly nudging you in the right direction without ever needing a minimap or a giant objective marker. Which honestly I love because I never really felt lost. I always had a sense of where I was going even though nothing was explicitly telling me, and on top of that, switching to a minimum HUD took one button. No 15 minutes digging through settings, no guessing what each slider does. The screen cleared instantly and everything just felt easy, clean and natural. Another great example of this is with Elden Ring, but for a completely different reason. Because unlike Ghost, it's not constantly guiding you, it's trusting you. Whenever you're out exploring, the HUD just fades away, and because the world is so deliberately designed, turning it off doesn't really change how you move through it. For instance, if I ever lost my sense of direction, I'd just look for the Erd tree towering in the sky, and when I wasn't sure where to go next, I'd move towards the biggest thing I could see, like Stormvale Castle or Raya Lucaria, places that naturally pull you forward. I wasn't following instructions, I was reading the world, and that made exploration feel intentional, not guided. But there is one more game I just have to mention, and that's Dead Space, because it takes this one step further. While Ghost of Yōtei and Elden Ring work without the HUD, Dead Space actually makes the HUD part of the world. It sounds simple, but whenever I played, I kept thinking of how awesome it was that instead of glancing at corners of the screen, my health and ammo were literally built into Isaac himself. I even thought the inventory was cool because it feels like something he's physically projecting in front of him. It never breaks immersion because it belongs there, and honestly I wouldn't be surprised if that's part of why this game is scary as shit. Everything just feels more real, more believable, and to me this is exactly how games are supposed to feel. And when you look at all three of these games together, it becomes really obvious. Some games don't just minimize the HUD, they remove the need for it, or in the best cases they make it part of the world. Which brings me to the game that surprised me the most, because after everything I've said, Cyberpunk 2077 is one of the few games that might actually need its HUD. And that feels weird to say because Cyberpunk is one of the most immersive games I've ever played. In fact, with the HUD off, it's stunning. The neon, the rain, the reflections, just walking around feels incredible. But the problem is that only works when I'm not playing the game. The second I try to do a quest or even just travel somewhere, I get completely lost. Not in a learning the map way like The Witcher, but more like a how many floors does this damn city have and which one am I on? Night City is beautiful, but it's also deliberately chaotic. It's vertical, layered, twisting, overlapping, and because of that, even after dozens of hours, I still can't navigate it naturally. I'd end up opening the map every 30 seconds just to figure out if I needed to go up, down, across a freeway, through a market, or into a mega building, and doing that constantly absolutely kills the immersion. So in Cyberpunk, while turning the HUD off is arguably immersive, it also is just really impractical. But here's what I think is interesting. Keeping the HUD on doesn't ruin the immersion because in Cyberpunk the HUD actually makes sense. Like V literally has cyberware. You're meant to see information floating in your vision. So for me, the HUD feels less like UI and instead something V would genuinely see through their own eyes. And even though I love how clean the game looks without it, Cyberpunk is one of the only games where I'm reasonably happy to play with the HUD on, because the game is built around it. It's not just a convenience, it's part of the fantasy. But even in saying that, sometimes people need the convenience, because turning off the HUD just isn't for everyone. Some players genuinely need HUD elements for accessibility, because yeah, it makes games harder, which not everyone wants. And then on top of that, there's multiplayer games. Like, I can't imagine playing the most recent Battlefield with the HUD off, unless I want to get my ass handed to me on purpose. But aside from that, when a game lets me and it mostly works, I'm probably gonna turn it off. Because once you've played without a HUD, you realize how capable you actually are, and how immersive games can feel when they trust you. On top of that, it gives you this weird sense of peace. Without all the noise and distractions, you finally get to just exist in the world again. It brings back that childlike wonder. And to the developers who already get this, I love you guys. Please never stop. But anyways, that's just my opinion. Thanks for turning off the HUD with me, and I hope this video made you go, yeah.